Everyone, Mr. A here again, ready for day 8, our last matchup in the first round of our March Madness of picture books. So here we go, exciting day. I got one of the books I was missing in the mail today. So that's why this video is getting out a little bit later today. It's almost, I think it's past 4 o'clock, almost 5 o'clock maybe. So usually I've been trying to post them more toward the middle of the day. But anyhow, let's get moving. So yesterday's winner, let me show you guys, was Whoosh. So Whoosh will move on to round 2. Hope you guys can see that all right. I got a new setup today, so things are a little different. So Whoosh will complete our bracket on this side. Bad Case of Stripes versus Nothing Ever Happens on 90th Street. Then The Faithful Friend versus Whoosh in round 2. On the other side of the bracket, Salt in His Shoes will match up against These Hands. And then Game Day will match up against today's winner between The Babe and I and Baseball Saved Us. So here are our 2 books today, The Babe and I and Baseball Saved Us. So 2 baseball books matching up for our final matchup of round 1. Okay, so first up today we have The Babe and I, written by David A. Adler. For my birthday, I was hoping my parents would give me a bicycle. They only gave me a dime. I was disappointed, but not surprised. It was 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression, and millions of people were out of work. We were lucky. My father had a job, but we never seemed to have much money. Where we lived, in the Bronx, New York, everyone was poor. Happy birthday, Dad said when I walked him outside. I watched him go off, carrying his briefcase and smiling. My neighbor Jacob was tossing a ball and catching it. He threw it to me and shouted, "Give me a high one. I'm Babe Ruth, the world's greatest baseball player." I threw the ball and Jacob reached up. It bounced off his hands. He was no Babe Ruth. We played for a while, and then Jacob said, "I have to go to work. Come with me. We can have a catch while we walk." A few blocks from home, we passed a woman selling apples. Her clothes were wrinkled and shabby. I gave her my birthday dime and bought 2 apples. One for me and one for Jacob. I was glad to be rid of the dime. It reminded me of the present I didn't get. Next, we turned on to Webster Avenue, and there were more apple sellers. Near the next corner, I saw a large briefcase. I looked up, and there was my dad, selling apples like the others. Suddenly, I couldn't move. "Come on," Jacob said. I pointed. "Oh," he whispered. "I thought your dad had a job." "So did I, and Mom thinks so too." There were tears in my eyes as I watched people walk past my father. I wished so much someone would buy an apple from him, but no one did. I realized how he had earned my birthday dime, and I was sorry that I had spent it. "I have to get to work," Jacob whispered. I was too dazed to know where we were going. I just followed Jacob until we came to a small building. "My dad is out of work too," Jacob said as he got in line. "That's why I'm a newsie. Sell newspapers with me. It's fun." I didn't feel like going home, so I stayed with Jacob. We collected our papers and he said, "Now I'll teach you how to really sell." We walked past a newsie on the corner. "Coney Island fire," he called out. 1,000 homeless. Read all about it." There were lots of people around, but I didn't see anyone buy a newspaper. Jacob and I passed another newsie, calling about the fire. Then we walked beyond the busy streets and apartment buildings. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," Jacob said. We walked until we came to an elevated train station. People were rushing from it to the large ballpark just ahead. "We're here," Jacob said. "That's Yankee Stadium." I held up one of my newspapers and called out the headline. "Coney Island fire. Read all about it." "No," Jacob said. "No one here's interested in fires." He picked up a newspaper and looked through it. "Here it is," he said. "This is what they want." "Babe Ruth hits home run," he called out. "Read all about it. The Babe hits number 25. Read all about it." "Here, I'll take one," a man said, and gave Jacob 2 cents. "Let me see that," another man said. Jacob was smart. These people were on their way to see a Yankee game. Of course they were interested in Babe Ruth. "Babe Ruth hits home run," I called out. "Read all about it." Jacob and I quickly sold all our papers. When we left the stadium, the coins in my pocket made a nice jingling sound. When we went back to the small building, I paid a penny for each paper we had sold. That left me with 25 cents. When I got home, I didn't tell Mom about Dad and the apples, but I told her about my job. She put the coins I earned in our money jar and said, "Don't say anything to your father about the newspapers. It might embarrass him to know you're helping out." Later, Dad came home and put his coins in the jar. He took off his shoes, stretched out on the couch, and said, "I was really busy at the office today. I'm tired." I wanted to tell him he didn't have to pretend he still had his job, but I couldn't. I just looked at Dad's briefcase and wondered what he had in there. The next day, Jacob and I called out about Babe Ruth again. He had hit his 26th home run. I quickly sold my newspapers. I knew I could have sold more if I had some way to get them to the stadium. When I got home, I searched the basement of our building for a wagon or anything with wheels. All I found were boxes and a torn suitcase. Just before I went back upstairs, I saw Mrs. Johnson pushing her baby in a carriage. "Could I borrow that?" I asked. "Why?" she asked. "You don't have a baby?" I told her about the newspapers. "I suppose so," Mrs. Johnson said, thinking. "But this would have to be a business arrangement. With my carriage, you'll make extra money, so I should make some too." She offered to rent the carriage to me for 10 cents an afternoon, and I agreed. On Monday, the front page story was about a 19-year-old boy who had robbed a telegraph office because he wanted to be arrested. He knew he would get something to eat in jail. Jacob and I didn't call out about the boy. We called out about Babe Ruth. He had won a game for the Yankees with a hit in the 12th inning. Thanks to Mrs. Johnson's carriage, I sold lots of papers. I had 80 cents to give Mom for the money jar. When Dad came home, he gave Mom a bottle of milk and a bag of apples and said, "I bought the apples from an unemployed man I passed on my way home." "Dad," I said, "that man is not unemployed. Selling apples is a job." No, it's not," he said sharply. "It's just what you do while you wait and hope for something better." He looked upset, and I realized how important it was for him to keep his secret. On Tuesday, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth collapses. Read all about it." And on Wednesday, "Babe Ruth stays home." He had hurt his leg, and doctors told him he wouldn't be able to play for 3 weeks. That night, Dad asked me to walk with him. When we were a few blocks from home, he said, "Today I saw you pushing Mrs. Johnson's baby carriage. I spoke with her, and she told me about the newspapers." "I'm just trying to help, Dad," he said. "I know." Dad held my hand firmly. We walked quietly for a while. Then Dad asked, "Were you ever on Webster Avenue?" "Once." He squeezed my hand, tears rolling down his cheeks. I didn't tell Mom, I said. Dad didn't say anything after that. I didn't either. We just walked. The next day, Jacob and I called out, "Babe Ruth sits with fans. Read all about it." "Here, kid, I'll take one." A tall man gave me a $5 bill. "I'm sorry," I told him. "I can't change that." "That's okay, kid. Keep the change." I just looked at the money. I couldn't believe anyone would pay that much for a newspaper. Jacob ran to me. "Do you know who that was?" he asked. "You sold a paper to Babe Ruth." In the few pictures I had seen of Babe Ruth, he was wearing his baseball uniform. I didn't recognize him without it. "Wow," I said. "I just sold a newspaper to Babe Ruth." I kept one hand in my pocket, holding on to my Babe Ruth bill. With my other hand, I sold newspapers, and I kept looking across the street toward where Babe Ruth had gone. When all our papers were sold, I pointed to Yankee Stadium and told Jacob, "I'm going over there." I needed to see Babe Ruth again. I checked the prices and realized that I could buy 2 tickets and still have plenty left for the money jar. So that's what I did. The stadium was noisy. Jacob and I walked through a short tunnel and saw a large baseball field. Babe Ruth was in the Yankee dugout with his teammates. When the game started, he stayed there. I guess his legs still hurt. I tried to watch everything: the pitcher, the catcher, the batter, the players on the field, and Babe Ruth. Near the end of the game, with the score tied, the Yankee catcher didn't come up to bat. Out came Babe Ruth. Everyone shouted and waved. I think I cheered the loudest. "He paid for my tickets," I told the man next to us. "He gave me $5 so I could see the game." The man smiled. I think the Red Sox pitcher was afraid Babe Ruth would hit a home run. He purposely threw wide of the plate 4 times and walked the Babe. We cheered again as Babe slowly walked to first base. We knew he couldn't hit a home run every time, but at least the Babe was back. Babe Ruth was part of the 1932 Yankees. That year, they were the best team in baseball. He and I were a team too. His home runs helped me sell newspapers. As I left Yankee Stadium, with the coins I had earned making that nice jingling sound in my pocket, I knew Dad and I were also a team. We were both working to get our family through hard times. Okay, so that was the end of The Babe and I. So make sure you remember that book and vote. And here's our second book, Baseball Saved Us, written by Ken Machizuki. Again, I will put both links for both books, Amazon links in there. So if you're interested in buying either of these for your personal library, then the links will be in the description below the video. One day, my dad looked out at the endless desert and decided then and there to build a baseball field. He said people needed something to do in camp. We weren't in a camp that was fun, like summer camp. Ours was in the middle of nowhere, and we were behind a barbed wire fence. Soldiers with guns made sure we stayed there, and the man in the tower saw everything we did, no matter where we were. As Dad began walking over the dry, cracked dirt, I asked him again why we were here. "Because," he said, "America is at war with Japan, and the government thinks the Japanese Americans can't be trusted. But it's wrong that we're here. We're Americans too." Then he made a mark in the dirt and mumbled something about where the infield bases should be. Back in school, before camp, I was shorter and smaller than the rest of the kids. I was always the last to be picked for any team when we played games. Then, a few months ago, it got even worse. The kids started to call me names and nobody talked to me, even though I didn't do anything bad. At the same time, the radio kept talking about some place far away called Pearl Harbor. One day, Mom and Dad came to get me out of school. Mom cried a lot because we had to move out of our house real fast, throwing away a lot of our stuff. A bus took us to a place where we had to live in horse stalls. We stayed there for a while until we came here. This camp wasn't anything like home. It was so hot in the daytime and so cold at night. Dust storms came and got sand in everything, and nobody could see a thing. We sometimes got caught outside, standing in line to eat or go to the bathroom. We had to use the bathroom with everybody else, instead of one at a time like at home. We had to eat with everybody else too, but my big brother Teddy ate with his own friends. We lived with a lot of people in what were called barracks. The place was small and had no walls. Babies cried at night and kept us up. Back home, the older people were always busy working, but now all they did was stand or sit around. Once, Dad asked Teddy to get him a cup of water. "Get it yourself," Teddy said. "What did you say?" Dad snapped back. The older men stood up and pointed at Teddy. "How dare you talk to your father like that?" one of them shouted. Teddy got up and kicked the crate he was sitting on and walked away. I had never heard Teddy talk to Dad that way before. That's when Dad knew we needed baseball. We got shovels and started digging up the sagebrush in the big empty space near our barracks. The man in the tower watched us the whole time. Pretty soon, other grown-ups and their kids started to help. We didn't have anything we needed for baseball, but the grown-ups were pretty smart. They funneled the water from irrigation ditches to flood what would become our baseball field. The water packed down the dust and made it hard. There weren't any trees, but they found wood to build bleachers. Bats, balls, and gloves arrived in a cloth sack from friends back home. My mom and other moms took the covers off mattresses and used them to make uniforms. They looked almost like the real thing. I tried to play, but I wasn't that good. Dad said I just had to try harder. But I did know that playing baseball here was a little easier than back home. Most of the time, the kids were the same size as me. All the time I practiced, the man in the tower watched. He probably saw the other kids giving me a bad time and thought that I was no good. So I tried to be better because he was looking. Soon, there were baseball games all the time. Grown-ups played, and us kids did too. I played second base because my team said it was the easiest. Whenever I was at bat, the infield on the other team started joking around and moving in real close. The catcher behind me and the crowd for the other team would say, "Easy out." I usually grounded out. Sometimes I got a single. Then came one of our last games of the year, to decide on the championship. It was the bottom of the ninth inning, and the other team was winning 3-2. One of our guys was on second, and there were 2 outs. 2 pitches, and I had swung both times and missed. I could tell that our guy on second was begging me to at least get a base hit so somebody better could come up to bat. Then the crowd was getting loud. "You can do it! Strike out! No hitter! No hitter!" I glanced at the guard's house behind the left field foul line and saw the man in the tower leaning on the rail with the blinding sun glinting off his sunglasses. He was always watching, always staring. It suddenly made me mad. I gripped the bat harder and took a couple practice swings. I was going to hit the ball past that guard's house, even if it killed me. Everyone got quiet, and the pitcher threw. I stepped into my swing and pulled the bat around hard. I'd never heard a crack like that before. The ball went even farther than I expected. Against the hot desert sun, I could see the ball high in the air as I ran to first base. The ball went over the head of the left fielder. I dashed around the bases, knowing for sure that I would get tagged out. But I didn't care. Running as fast as I could to home plate, I didn't even realize that I'd crossed it. Before I knew it, I was up in the air on the shoulders of my teammates. I looked up at the tower, and the man, with a grin on his face, he gave me the thumbs up sign. But it wasn't as if everything was fixed. Things were bad again when we got home from camp after the war. Nobody talked to us on the street, and nobody talked to me at school either. Most of my friends from camp didn't come back here. I had to eat lunch all by myself. Then baseball season came. I was the smallest guy again, but playing baseball in camp had made me a lot better. The other guys saw that I was a pretty good player. They started calling me Shorty, but they smiled when they said it. By the time the first game came around, I felt like part of the team. Everyone was laughing and horsing around on the bus, but as soon as we got out there, it hit me. Nobody on my team, or the other team, or anybody in the crowd looked like me. When we walked out on the field, my hands were shaking. It felt like all these mean eyes were staring at me, wanting me to make mistakes. I dropped the ball that was thrown to me, and I heard people in the crowd yelling, "Jap!" I hadn't heard that word since before I went to camp. It meant that they hated me. My team came up to bat, and I was up next. I thought maybe I should pretend to be sick so I wouldn't have to finish the game. But I knew that would make things even worse, because I would get picked on at school for being a chicken, and they would use the bad word too. Then it was my turn at bat. The crowd was screaming, "The Jap's no good, easy out." I heard laughing. I swung twice and missed. The crowd roared each time I missed, drowning out my teammates who were saying, "Come on, Shorty, you can do it." I stepped back to catch my breath. When I stepped back up to the plate, I looked at the pitcher. The sun glinted off his glasses as he stood on the mound, like the guard in the tower. We stared at each other. Then I blocked out the noise around me and got set. The pitcher wound up and threw. I swung and felt that solid whack again, and I could see that little ball in the air against the blue sky and puffy white clouds. It looked like it was going over the fence. The end. All right, again, that was Baseball Saved Us by Ken Machizuki. All right, you guys, so don't forget to vote. The Babe and I, hi Nico, and Baseball Saved Us. So these two books are our final matchup in the first round. This is Nico over here reading his baseball book. Say hi, Nico.
Hi.
What book are you reading? Baseball Colors, huh? All right, so again, that was our last and final matchup for the first round. So please vote so we can complete our first round bracket, and we'll start round 2 tomorrow. Thanks again. See you tomorrow.